My name is Devorę Peck. I interviewed His Holiness the Karmapa in September of 1980. His Holiness is the spiritual head of the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. It was founded in the 8th century and consists of an unbroken line of masters up unto this day. The teachings of the Kagyu lineage and Tibetan Buddhism are universally applicable at all times and in all cultures. His Holiness the Karmapa is the peak of Tibetan Buddhist yoga, meditation, practice, and realization. He is said to be a living example of boundless compassion, joy, and wisdom. He is the chief spiritual teacher of the countries of Bhutan and Sikkim, and is a guide to hundreds of thousands of disciples throughout the world. Traditionally, just before passing away, all Karmapas leave a note indicating when and where they will be reborn. At the time of this taping, we are awaiting news of the birth of the 17th Karmapa. His Holiness Karmapa asked me to set up the Kagyu Video Project to produce and distribute this and other tapes on Tibetan Buddhist meditation and its teachers. This non-profit project welcomes you to write us for further information at the address listed at the end of this tape. As His Holiness states, the most direct way for one to experience, understand, and realize the benefits of the Buddha's teachings is to study directly with a Lama. Therefore, all of the centers and monasteries His Holiness has set up throughout the world welcome you to experience this directly. You can also buy books and tapes of these teachings by writing the monasteries. It is said that His Holiness's blessing can be experienced merely by thinking of Him. Certainly, it is our wish that all who see and hear this tape directly experience this blessing, and that each and every one of you realize your innate peace, joy, awareness, and tranquility. What follows is the interview I did with Karmapa. It was translated by Nudra Burkhardt. I thank you. First of all, we would like to thank His Holiness for granting us this interview on behalf of all of Karma Theksum Cholings in America, and so that we can hopefully think of him and remember him always, even though he is not here in flesh, in physical body. What is the overall purpose of Buddhist meditation? What are its benefits to the general public of America?
나요 고가 마요 때네 고알 춘 되기어래 등등조도 다시 두서도 미 마야나 그추 다요 두서도 된는 겐거 지샤지 간지기 텔 다른데 담메게 힘이 캠보도 스타지메 비추선 게미 타마자 받친데 슌발 때네 저는 저로서 네 주경께서 마찬가지게 지기도 베게 람 로발 마로는 람송보 덴빌람테의 야치바 인자 대 구바 첨보 요절 상도스
His Holiness feels there is in fact a great benefit because people everywhere are caught up in all situations of confusion and ignorance, and through the understanding and integration of the Buddhist teaching there is the possibility of a complete breakthrough in that there is the possibilities of becoming completely sane and completely awake, that uprooting of all one's situations of ignorance and confusion. And because of this ignorance and confusion, beings everywhere go through all kinds of sufferings. As His Holiness had said earlier, the purpose of sending a learned teacher like our abbot is also to make the teaching available to the people, and available in such a way that they can understand the benefit of such, which is to the explaining and making it understandable that we are capable of becoming completely sane.
How long should a beginning person meditate daily?
Shuna da mi kasa tuba chinji de kechambari. Tini teme da ranga da mi destiny seyure kanjige tel tani leka malina tamme batim jinza. Tani tiga duso te pa puba go tani kasa duso fa batim te chola madon ashene. Gamdi dekure tani maiki tana teacher tatande Chirda America goes to New York show me.
Zolan says that actually the one should meditate as much as possible, because more the better. There is not a fixed time. Yet, because of one's responsibilities in the world, that it is not always possible to have a lot of time to practice. So therefore, doing the practice as consistently as possible is most important, meditation practice. And besides, you have teachers with you, and in accordance with the instructions of the teachers, that practicing is very important. Some sense of situation of personal relationship with the teachers is very important. Here in America, His Holiness has left teachers and his representatives here. Since the teachers and the teachings are valuable, that taking advantage of them and that making it very personal is very important.
Again, for beginners, there are many more beginners coming in the next few years before His Holiness comes back. And if His Holiness could please speak about Shinei meditation and what are the benefits and advantages.
Shinei ko pemba yimba tata konike batgarari. Mise tata jewo kenan mi tuzongono ichi. Tani maige chu tomar mahayani chu deji miye chudo masuna kude tusotna jihu. Te sentna tu tenten job matabache. Sen yuarda ne matabache. Tani te chu te unjega pege ji kon kode ji yobala tanda ngusu nyamsranga layondu. Me tan drechin jinge te nyams lene driven drechin are toing do sonj meva rochin pa sangi singe ki leno ro tin shiyore tin nyambol tadande tombosan hyuarde nechi tini tagal magi tomog ngando ka jang tini tel tu bena shonjuga sarmbachi je tenzar meka taltiya korum tati chinjiga naranga jul nyamsilenti tini yatini maakatandi rimbega ranga jul lenti che korumdu masuna yabuchi shuna tini chute hiwa jante otsu dandu denpa chinji yungri tini yinza tomar hineti kechambari sekuya za tini chires.
The Holiness says that the mind is at the moment going through such situations of restlessness and uncertainty. It's like the boiling water. It's such situations of restlessness, and in that situation you receive the teachings. You find yourself placed in a very difficult situation, in that you sort of have heard the teachings, yet you really haven't understood what you heard, because your mind is so absolutely confused and going through all kinds of uncertainty. So in order to be able to completely accommodate as well as appreciate and understand the teachings fully, that first one must develop the calmness of one's mind. And so therefore, towards the calmness of one's mind, the shine, or the tranquility meditation practice, is very important. In fact, relating to any aspect of the Buddhist practices, is that the basic ground is the calmness and clarity of one's mind, and which is developed through the basic sitting practice of shine. And then, when one has developed certain calmness and clarity of one's mind, then one could appreciate the idea of compassionate mind, and practice and develop compassion, and that tread on the path of the bodhisattvas, and or at a more beginner situation that understand meaningfully the four thoughts that turn one's mind towards the Dharma, and appreciate them and integrate them, so that tunes one towards following the compassionate being's idea, that of the bodhisattva's ideals, and treading on the bodhisattva path, and then that of the treading on the highest vehicle, that of the following the Vajrayana teachings. So if one thus follows the practices in this systematic way, it could become very, very meaningful.
Yeshe Norbu, could you please give us some advice for those of your students who have responsibilities in the world and are pulled towards their jobs and their careers and their families if they have children, and how they can integrate their practice more into their life, into their everyday, daily life?
That individuals themselves, if they have a sincere appreciation of the teachings, with their involvement in the mundane world, taking care of their job responsibilities or family responsibilities, that with their appreciation of the teachings, that a certain time can be made, an appropriate distribution of time can be made, and that could affect into one's proper integration of the Dharma. And so that is very important. And also some amount of this is dependent on the understandings that one's spiritual friends are able to have to such situations, considering that you have such involvements that in whatever way the teachings can be made more available to you, or more easily available to you in accordance with your availability of time. There is that also possibility.
Could His Holiness tell us students how we can develop more loving kindness and compassion towards each other within the Sangha, and then out into the communities where our Dharma centers are?
teneranga sen chuton tokres.
Zonna says first understanding the importance, and then the training one's mind with mindfulness. If one is not going to train oneself with mindfulness, and first developing conditional loving kindness and compassion, it will not just happen itself. For instance, that if one had encountered certain situation, of aggressive situation, and one immediately realizing that what one's teacher had explained to one, told one, what is the healthiest and the realistic thing to do. So in this way, reminding oneself and training oneself.
Is there a possibility of tulkus being born in America or in the West in general? And then how would this affect our cultural life in America?
Mandaina Chuga Zawate Meva Yinza Triveko Chuyo Mare. Tatada Zanin Chushu Me Chute Yava Yinza Chuyo Salti Triveko Rodangishito Pay Triveko Muso Pendu Cover Sanctus. Ninjurwa Bena Ranga Po Triveko Rayana Triveko Di Ranga Pama Yenja Chuda Deva Chenji Misega Yondo Kavres.
His Holiness says, yes, there is good possibilities of tulkus or incarnate teachers coming or taking birth in the West, because in the past such have not happened, because the teachings have not been established, teachings had not taken root in the West. Now that the teachings are beginning to be established and taking root in the West, and in order to continue the work of the making the teachings available, such compassionate teachers will be born. For instance, that if a certain couple is the parents of an enlightened teacher, then they would definitely be very much inspired and encourage themselves to get fully involved in the practice of the teachings.
America Yinza Yutna Triveko Koran Yutna the Marichibana Yichimbal Dene Kandri Senati Yukurugubige Luxore me Shaganambare Des Kanina Dragre Tendrel Denity Sonika Mampa Rodan on the Hidaga Dessenjoan Rosigri.
And also there is the possibilities of some changes in the way of relationships, because being born in an American form, for instance, the appearance, and that of in the American culture and in the Western culture, that one at the very beginning of one's life would be familiar with such a culture and that of the people, and that could bring some definite changes in the way of communication, in the way of presentations.
Many people in America would be interested to know, according to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, do women have an equal chance to progress spiritually and become enlightened beings as men?
Nambi chula pomo le matsapa chu tiga zobu sonji chandan dega inji chembu kone tene tushe lana mebati tob tene mianba tsam chenji wa romba tsam chigo sanjananga na tuna ba bu 샤르다 간제진제 나와도 투나 야송게 째고 쳐투였으니 손지지 같은 말을 듣는 요아래 드니 메르 포모도 지르기 요아 단소연체 담만은 요아 말이었어.
Through the compassionate teachings of the Buddha, and through the power of the compassion, His Holiness says that with the recitation of certain sacred syllables, like the mantras, that it could affect the transformation of the lives of tiny creatures, as that of the tiniest insect, that through the recitation of the mantra and through transmission of the blessings and the compassion of that to these creatures, that such experience of upliftment as that never having to be born into lower realms is possible. And of course, that there is no difference for male or female, or for men and women, and also whether there is no discrimination in terms of belonging to a higher family or that of a lower family. This situation of caste do not exist in the compassionist teachings of the Buddha. So all have equal chances.
Yeshe Norbu, you said in an earlier interview that during this time in the world, the gross and neurotic aspects of human qualities are becoming more present and more apparent. Could you elaborate on this, and also on what you see happening in the world in the future? Will this degradation or this turning away from Dharma increase, or will it decrease?
Nyamungi nyambo terang sonotoni. Tani ini mila mi chusumba terang nyamsleni. Tomo tomar sent hiwardi gatwa kati nyamsleni. Tani tiga tote senjala ninje. Tani chula yishikwa nesu tenso yoncha rangu jolo. Ten tote washi. Ten tote te tsar te seji mi. Rangi nyamotu sunga jute dendeba yinza samsa nato meyo sigmari te nato shuna osara nato rangi to shundu shumeli kasal yani ka rangi to pandrota vajidam te jesu te mako nato te tendeji shuna tenis rangi chu sunjone unjaga nikane chu tega Yes.
His Holiness says that is very personal, it's very individual, whether it's going to change whatever directions. So as His Holiness has said earlier, therefore the practice of the calmness and the clarity of one's mind through meditation is very important, and then through that practicing loving kindness and compassion and confidence in the teachings. And that as one begins to develop the calmness of one's mind, clarity of one's mind, and train one's mind to be more compassionate and gentle, then that one is able to accommodate different situations and give space, have space. And at such points, even if the one has not completely uprooted one's the habitual patterns and neurotic thoughts, yet then one will find oneself not completely overwhelmed or controlled by one's negative thoughts. That the thoughts take place, yet one is also able to work towards dissolving the thoughts from coming into negative, powerful actions.
Rangu Julo Dendebate Comperton Royeris. The Madena Tundela Susano Maton Bache, Huli Tuzo, Yan J to the Dijimati, then Yansu Male, the Ranga Sai, you are the Manene, that Chlachan Bushirachan, you said you are eating what down. Johnston, then John Johnny. Taga, lo choose a mandroy, kid the deduction. They catch him with your areas.
His Holiness's consistent practice and integration of the meaning of the Dharma is absolutely important. That calmness and clarity of the mind and that of the compassionate insight and attitude. If one has those experiences, then it's a sign of one's beginning to integrate the meaning of the Dharma. If not, it's just when teachings are happening that one is listening to it, and then at other times one has forgotten it. Then if this situation is going to continue, then at one point that one is going to become more and more distant and from the Dharma, and more disconnected, and finally the chances of one's mind properly following the Dharma would be out of the situation. So that's why that integration of what one understands is definitely very important.
Would His Holiness have any final word to tell his students in America himself, even though many of his great lamas are here teaching us, that he could tell us before he returns again, and how soon can he return again?
His Holiness says that because of accumulation of merit, that we have the teachings available for us, that fortunate beings of a fortunate time, in the case of those who have been able to make involvement in the practice of the Dharma. And when one has such an opportunity as this, that one is able to completely involve oneself towards the practice of the Dharmas, some situation of discipline and decency is definitely very important. A discipline and a decency in the way of honoring the teachings and that of honoring the teachers. For instance, that one's teacher in a way directs one's path and lights one's path, and in order to give one proper directions and proper insight that certain recommendations or certain advices are given, that it should be one's sincerest concern to make sure that such are followed through and that practices are done properly. Centers which are started under the direction of His Holiness Karma Teksun Gyalwang and that of Tongpa Rinpoche or Kala Rinpoche are exactly the same, in the same lineage, the same teachings, and the same purpose. It's like three people of the same family, and so that understanding and working with that understanding is very important. And so many teachers are coming, and that the great Bodhisattvas are also visiting, and very soon that you are going to have the visit of the most venerable Shama Rinpoche, and in this way the teachers and the teachings are available to you, and one has to make complete use of the availability of the teaching. And His Holiness is very much impressed by the disciplines that the members of Dharmadhatu have under the direction of Tongpa Rinpoche, and we are also doing very well. We are progressing, and yet it's important to be able to follow proper disciplines, and that in whatever individuals as members of the centers can contribute and can exert themselves in enhancing and in developing in that so that our centers and everything altogether becomes more uplifted, more dignified, and outwardly and inwardly is important. And then towards that, in one's practice also, exertion and clarity and longing and sense of certitude and confidence is very important. For instance, a certain particular time you have to meet for teachings or you have to meet for practices, that making sure that you do so. That in this way that you are being a very good example, because the teachings must last and will last for a very long time, and we have to set examples for generations and generations to come. In fact, for eons and eons, that a lasting example. And so the responsibility is very, very important, and so that we have the responsibility of setting a good example for ourselves and that of for the benefit of others. So through one's confidence of clarity and longing and certitude and proper exertion in the Dharma and proper sense of openness, all these must be followed through and developed. And also the accumulation of merit is definitely important in order to be fully appreciate and integrate the meaning of the teachings. And the Gampopa had emphasized this very much. In fact, that Gampopa's name was Sonam Rinchen, which is the jewel of merit, or that the precious merit is therefore the accumulation of merit is very important. We talk about the two accumulation of merit and awareness. Accumulation of merit in the way that is realizing the importance of the enlightened object of the refuge, and in whatever way one can respect them, honor them, uphold them, and make offerings in the way of flowers, incense, and any worthy objects of offerings. Through that one makes meritorious accumulation, and through one's meditation practices, and that the accumulation of awareness. So the two accumulations are important. as far as the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are concerned, then though having attained the perfect state of enlightenment, that of Buddhahood, yet through the inexhaustible accumulation of meritorious qualities, and that through the inexhaustible that compassion that has manifested in many different forms and in many different skillful ways towards benefiting beings. And so, as far as the blessings and the guidances are concerned, are inexhaustible. It's not like other situations of relationship with other situations of work or so one should thus take full advantage of these. And as far as the centers are also concerned, ours is not like different parties, different organizations. One is having competition with the others. Ours is a sacred place. It's of the teachings, sacred place of the practice, and so therefore again setting a true example of the sacredness of it, that ours is to help each other to a situation of sanity, situation of enlightenment, and that this is our purpose and this is what we are capable of, and that we should be able to bring that out into the world, so that peace and calmness could be brought to all beings, and that all beings could then appreciate our work and take part in it, because they see that there is a discipline in it, there is a dignity in it, there is a sanity in it, and there is that understanding, friendship in it. So therefore our responsibility is in fact very much. Towards that end, His Holiness also has made it the Kamatriana Dharma Chakra, Woodstock, as the main seat, and that where the traditional monastery will be built. And the purpose of the monastery will be also that it will house many sacred statues and that of sacred teachings in the way of the Kangyurs and the Tengyurs, and that symbolizing the presence of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and many that monks and teachers. And so in this way, that a treasure of the teachings, and in order to make the teachings available to the Western world and people, and these are the objects that are in His Holiness' mind, and that this should come about. And so having these opportunities available, that one also should make this one's relationship and one's the practice very meaningful, that the Dharma is never known that the Dharma had ever been deceptive, and that is practicing the Dharma that there's definite fruition. And so with confidence and with some situation of tirelessness, working and practicing is very important, and towards that, and towards the peace of the world, and towards that flourishing of the Dharma, and that towards the progress of your work in the different centers and the different individual practitioners. His Holiness prayers and thoughts are always with all of you, that you may all live long and in healthy ways and with understandings, and everything in fact in a very proper way. And so, Taisha Delek to all of you.